Hello, I'm Eros from Civic Roots presenting our first podcast series, Voice for the Voiceless. In this podcast, we interview people whose history is being forgotten, and it is our focus to preserve this history's oral culture and archive the experiences of the most vulnerable people in America. In this first collection of podcasts, we hear the experiences of a black Southern family who recall their history since the Civil War, through the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights Movement. Our guest speaker today is Raymond Macon Jr., an eclectic educator drawing lessons and lectures from a range of subjects including science, civics, and history. Throughout his life, Raymond has dedicated much of his time to educating people on Black American history. He explains the struggles of his ancestors that have been passed down for 130 years, which parallels the reality of American history. So without further ado, here is Raymond Macon Jr. Raymond, today I wanted to talk to you about a bunch of things, really, and we can go on tangents for some time, but I really wanted to capture your family's experience, your family's history in the South, in Alabama, and what kind of things you went through growing up.
Well, I'd be happy to share that. My personal experience hasn't been as intense as that of the experiences of other members of my family. The best place to start would be with my grandfather Lorenzo Macon, who came to Birmingham in 1921. I remember that's what he told me.
Mm.
And this part of Birmingham, we're in the northern part of the city. And at that time, this area known as Smithfield and East Thomas was, you might say, a mixed community. It was predominantly white people who lived here. My grandfather, though, uh, bought a house and moved in with his family.
Hmm.
And he was immediately approached by the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, wow.
They told him that they had considered him a decent man so that they would not harass him. They would allow him to live in this area and raise his family.
I'm sure your grandfather was a decent man, but what is a Ku Klux Klan member saying that to a black man?
Well, the alternative is Digger will hit you, will lynch you from the highest tree.
Well, I'm
Those
glad
were the
that wasn't the case.
right. All of us are, but that was the way things were done back then. There were people in this state and throughout the South who could still remember the Civil War. And as I told you on another occasion, my family has a very, very American history. There are uh, the Macons, my name, but even how we got that name was very interesting. My great grandmother, her name was Pearl Macon, and she was a white woman. One of her uncles, Uncle Thomas, and my great uncle Thomas, fought in the Civil War. He served under Stonewall Jackson at the Battle of Chancellorsville in Virginia, a Confederate victory. Then joined with an Alabama regiment that attached itself to the Army of Northern Virginia and marched with Robert E. Lee and fought at Gettysburg. There he was wounded. His regiment was all but wiped out on Little Round Top. There was a prisoner of war exchange, and he was returned to the Confederate Army. He was now a man with one arm. He had his arm amputated by Union surgeons because of the injuries that he suffered at Gettysburg. and he returned home to Mobile, Alabama, way down in South Alabama, as we would say.
Mm.
There, his brother had a daughter named Pearl, and she left home in Mobile and traveled to the other side of the state to East Alabama, where she met my great grandfather. His name was Arthur. Well, they fell in love and decided to have a family. But because she was a white woman and he was a black man, they were not allowed to marry. Alabama state law forbade any and all interracial marriages in those days. This is the 1890s now that we're talking about.
Mm. Right
Nine
after
children.
Reconstruction.
Yes, Reconstruction now had ended, and all of the federal troops that had been in the South to reinforce the standards of Reconstruction had been withdrawn. And they were redeployed, believe it or not, in Utah. It's another story altogether. But anyway, there was no enforcing the laws and enforcing the amendments except for the 13th Amendment, which gave my
Right.
ancestors their freedom, the 14th Amendment, which gave them citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave black men the right to vote. That was a right that neither one of my grandfathers dared exercise until the 1960s.
Wow.
Um, and it was the Voting Rights Act, which finally allowed them to do that.
Mm.
So, anyway, Pearl Macon marries Arthur Milbrooks. That was my great grandfather's name. But their marriage was not recognized. And so she could not give his name to any of their children. So they were all born as Macons.
Okay.
Uh, so my grandfather uh, was born in 1895. And he told me many years ago that he did not want to be a sharecropper. And sharecropping, for those of your listeners who do not know, was the system by which men were given land to farm. And you would raise a crop and sell it, and then you would share some of the profits with a white. I wouldn't call him a landowner. He was technically, but it was the farmers who actually worked the land. You see, the great plantations were broken up after the Civil War, and the freed slaves, were promised 40 acres and a mule. They got neither. But what they were allowed to do was to farm this land. And so you shared the profits of from the crop, and so you were called a sharecropper. That was something my grandfather did not want to do. So he left Opelika, Alabama, which is in southeastern Alabama, and went north and west and came to Birmingham, which was a booming steel town, especially after World War One. Many black men came to Birmingham and worked the steel mills. Both of my grandfathers did.
Wow.
At any rate, he told me, no, I did not want to be a sharecropper, so I came to Birmingham, and that's where he settled. I guess maybe it was because he also was a steel worker. 73% of all the steel workers in Birmingham's steel industry were black men in those years. And he was considered a decent man. And so the Klan decided that they would not molest him, they would not harass him, and he was allowed to stay in this part of Birmingham and raise his family.
White men being in a constant threat must have been jarring for them.
Well, I would think it was. Um,
Yeah.
it was all part of the attitude that prevailed throughout the South in the years that followed the Civil War. My great grandmother Pearl was born after the Civil War ended, but of course, she knew men who had fought in the Civil War. You know, her uncle being one of them. So the memories were very much alive. But when Pearl left her family in Mobile and traveled to the other side of Alabama, they, from what we could determine, put a curse on her name, and she was never mentioned again. Never remembered. Her name wasn't written down in any documents except for her birth certificate. But that was it.
Wow.
Uh, the white Macons completely disowned her,
Hmm.
and as far as they were concerned, she was as good as dead. We did not know who these Macons were until my sister-in-law got on Ancestry.com, and my brother sent them a DNA sample, and they did an investigation into our family, and what we found was a complete and utter surprise, which I won't go into here. Maybe that can be this story for another occasion. But the bottom line is that wherever you see the name Macon in the South, there's a Macon County in Alabama. There is a Macon, the city of Macon in Georgia. There are Macon Islands and other pieces of land named Macon. That is my family. Those are my
Wow.
white ancestors that you are reading about and learning about. They went on to some prominence in both the states of Virginia and North Carolina, as well as Georgia
Hmm.
and Alabama, too, for that matter. One of them went on and became a prominent member in the United States Congress, first as a member of the House of Representatives, representing a district of North Carolina. He rose to become Speaker of the House, then went on and became a senator from North Carolina, serving at least two terms. It's a wild and scrambled history. When my sister-in-law contacted the white Macons in Mobile, they were completely shocked. They had no idea we existed, none at all.
Yeah, I mean, their family didn't mention her at all. I wouldn't expect any more of the generations after them to know her at all.
So we've uh, we've held discussions amongst ourselves as to whether we will pursue any further contact with the white Macons. They were
Uh-huh.
not hostile, so that was good. And we'll turn it over, and I dare say that I'll make some effort to get in touch with them myself. It would be interesting just to see how far we can push the envelope.
Yeah. I would be interested to hear more about your interactions with the white Macons as well. If there's history of racism that's passed down, or have generations developed into a better, having a better way of thinking about race in general.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know what to think or what to expect, even.
Uh-huh.
Um, but one thing I have learned since coming back to Alabama, I moved away in 1981. I came back in 2012 and lived here for 9 months, taking care of my mother. And then an opportunity arose for me to return to Colorado, and I gladly took it and went back. Um, but one of the things that has not changed in the more than 40 years that I've been away is how things are viewed here. it seems that everything here is viewed through the prism of race. And for
Yeah,
someone like myself, it's very disturbing.
I bet.
My relatives see things that way, and it's expressed just in the way you would see ordinary people. Where Whereas in other places, you might see a man, say on the street, and you would describe him as being so tall and wearing a white shirt and say blue jeans. And maybe if you were close enough to the color of his eyes or the shape of his nose or something like that. Not here.
Hmm.
It's always whether that person is black, white. That's the first thing that's given in a person's description.
Has your family living in Alabama, in Birmingham, had to warn you about things?
No, and my family has given me what I think is has been very good advice. Keep your mouth shut. I've been told that by more than one family member. I'm known for voicing my opinions anyway,
Hmm.
and so I've taken that as good advice. It's a different way of looking at things. I mean, the climate here, of course, is different. The culture is different. The food is different. And so, getting used to all of those things again, I've been back here for 3 weeks, and my head has finally stopped spinning.
Wow.
It's taken that long to uh, to acclimate myself again to the way people see things and do things.
And your family went through a lot, as I recall you telling me a couple of times, especially during the civil rights movements in the 60s.
Well, some of that civil rights history took place on this very street I live on now. 1963 was a very volatile year here in Birmingham. We
Hmm.
had the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church on September 15th. That was the bombing the Ku Klux Klan carried out. 4 young girls were killed in that bombing. Two of them were people that were girls that my family knew.
Hmm.
So that was one thing. There was the visit that the Commissioner for Public Safety made on this street that I live on, Eugene Bull Connor. The Commissioner for Public Safety was also the police commissioner here in Birmingham. And he decided that he was going to show the people who lived here who was boss, who was running things in this city. So he paid us a visit, but it was partly a friendly one. He brought a squadron of his all-white police force with him. They came with their attack dogs, and Connor himself came down our street in a tank,
Wow.
swiveling the gun turret around, pointing it at people's homes, at homes of my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, our neighbors. This is what 1963 meant here.
Martial law
Oh,
against black people.
yeah, that basically was what it was. That's a good way of putting it. Martial law against black people. I live on what is now called Dynamite Hill here in Birmingham. It is called Dynamite Hill because many of the people who lived on this hill were active in the civil rights movement. Their activity earned them the wrath of the Ku Klux Klan. And so their houses were dynamited, were bombed
Wow.
by the Klan. And so that's why this hill is called Dynamite Hill.
As a reminder of that?
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
don't we don't forget that here.
Yeah.
We don't forget that. And so, yeah, Bull Connor came up Dynamite Hill to show us who was in charge here in the city of Birmingham. So, yeah, there were people here who took an active hand in the events that transpired during those very tumultuous years. And if you come to Dynamite Hill now, which has been designated as a historic district here in the city of Birmingham. And you walk around. I remember a friend of mine from Colorado came here to visit me when I was here taking care of my mother back in the year 2012. And we walked around and he looked at the quiet homes with the well maintained lawns and yards and uh, the peace and the quiet. And he said, It's hard to believe that what you said happened actually happened here. He said, Yes, you come here now and it's a quiet neighborhood and no signs of at all of strife or fighting. Once upon a time, that was not so.
Right.
And now, Birmingham, the politics and everything else in the city has completely changed. Uh, the majority of the population in Birmingham now is black. The mayor is black.
Hmm.
Uh, the city council is mostly black, if not all black.
That's an impressive change.
Yeah, some of that is due to white flight. In fact, a lot of it is. But some of it is also due to the fact that not everyone in Birmingham, black or white, sees everything through a racial lens. Not everybody does. A good many do, but enough have, you might say, evolved in their thinking here to where there is a semblance, at least, of some kind of progressive thinking here in the city. So that has been interesting for me to take note of in my return to Birmingham. But but this is still a place where we want to not forget our history, and a place where that history has to be fought for. 3 blocks from where I'm living now stands Parker High School. Parker High School is a most remarkable institution. It was the school that my parents attended, the high school that they attended 75 years ago. My youngest brother and sister attended Parker High School. A good many members of my family went to Parker High School. And what made Parker High School remarkable was in its heyday, particularly when my parents were students there, it was the largest educational establishment for Black people, not in Birmingham, not in Alabama, not even in the United States, but in the entire world. This was the largest educational establishment for Black people on earth. This high school was. 2 graduating classes a year at Parker High School, one in January, one in May. 4,000 students. Now we're talking about back in the 1950s
Uh-huh.
when this was going on. If you lived in Jefferson County, Alabama, that was the only high school you could attend. Whites had any number of choices. Blacks had only one, and that was Parker High School. But now that history is under threat. There has been a proposal made to move the Alabama School of Fine Arts to Parker High School, to put an end to Parker High School.
An end to Parker High School.
Yes, and turn it into the Alabama School for Fine Arts.
Oh.
And I have talked to different Parker High School alumni, and I have suggested, and I believe they are going to pursue this vigorously, that if they want to save Parker High School, they are going to have Parker placed in the Registry of Historic Places.
Hmm. And they could
It
probably
deserves
do
that.
that.
Yes, it deserves that.
It
Tulsa
deserves that.
deserves that without a doubt. This is an effort, we believe, to erase our history, to pretend that it never happened. And so, to prevent that, we're going to have to take measures.
Right.
And so, I've suggested that to Parker alumni, and it was an idea that they think is a good one, and they are going to pursue it. I'll keep you apprised as to what happens.
Yeah, please do.
But but you would think that that would be the last thing anyone would think about here in the 21st century.
Right.
But it goes to show that we cannot rest. We can never take what we have for granted. If we do, it'll be taken away from us. If someone were to suggest going to a place like Mount Vernon in Virginia or Monticello and turning them into a bed and breakfast, there would be outrage.
Yeah.
You'd never hear the end of it. But now we're going to take an institution that is almost as old as Birmingham itself and erase its history,
No.
pretend it never existed.
It's
No,
horrible.
no, we can't do that.
No.
So that was an idea that didn't occur to Parker's alumni. They were very happy I suggested it. And it told me that it was worth coming back to Birmingham for that reason alone. It was worth coming back for that.
Right. Related to that, there is this other side that is using defense to justify that we should keep monuments of Confederate soldiers up because it's a part of our history. Although there is some clear implications that it's not only history, but it's also a reminder to the black folk in the South that there was a lot done to them and it will last for a while.
Well, I've talked with members of my family about that.
Okay. What do they think?
Um, they're all for keeping the Confederate monuments as long as we remember what the Confederacy stood for.
Interesting.
We need to disavow this motion that goes all the way back to the 1860s, actually, in 1870s, that this was the lost cause, that the Confederates army was fighting to defend their homes, their land, their families. And there's no doubt that there were many who fought in the Confederate Army who were fighting with that in mind. After all, Northern armies invaded the South, not the other way around.
Right.
And so, yes, they were fighting to keep their homes and their farms and things of that nature. We're not denying that. And all the more so, I can't. I mean, the members of my family fought in the Confederate Army. So I can't turn around and act like that never happened and erase it. I can't do that, nor should I.
Right.
On the other hand, Montgomery, Alabama, Alabama's state capital, I think very well captures what can and should be done in answering this question. There are three things in Montgomery that I think people should see, and I'm going to make every effort to get down to Montgomery to see all three for myself. One is the state capitol, and there is a statue on the portico of the state capitol of Jefferson Davis, the first and only president of the Confederacy. They've raised a statue to him. Well, all right, fine. That needs to be remembered because Montgomery was the first capital of the Confederacy. A lot of people don't know that. When they know anything about the Civil War, which few do these days,
Yeah.
they think about the capital of the Confederacy. They think it's Richmond. No, Richmond was the second capital of the Confederacy. The first capital was Montgomery. So that's why there's a statue to Jefferson Davis there because he was the president of the Confederacy. Now, not far from the state capitol and Jefferson Davis statue is another building that is very important that has been preserved. It's the first White House of the Confederacy.
Hmm.
That
White
is
House.
in Montgomery. Yes, the first White House of the Confederacy is in Montgomery, and they have preserved it. Now, what I thought was interesting was when Alabama finally decided that it would no longer fly the Confederate flag over the state capitol. There was a big controversy about that. And finally, it was the Attorney General of Alabama who ruled that the Confederate flag had to come down. It could no longer fly over the state capitol in Montgomery. When asked why had he made that decision, he said very pointedly and simply, because the Alabama state constitution says only two flags can fly over the state capitol, and they are the flag of the United States and the flag of the state of Alabama. Those are the only two that can fly over the state capitol. The stars and bars must come down. There were a lot of people in Alabama who were upset about that decision, but there was nothing they could do about it because sure enough, they looked in the state constitution and it was clear. That was what the state constitution said. So the stars and bars were taken down. However, when the flag was brought to the first White House of the Confederacy, which is maintained and preserved by the Daughters of the Confederacy, they told the people who brought the flag, we will not fly that flag here.
Hmm.
That said a lot.
It did.
But that was the decision. We will not fly the Confederate flag here. And this, you would think, would be the one place it would fly.
Right. The
No,
capital.
that's right. They said no. Then there is the third place here in Montgomery that everyone should see because it stands in stark contrast to the Confederate monuments that are here. Jefferson Davis's statue in the White House of the Confederacy. And that is the Legacy Museum in Montgomery.
What do they hold? What do they preserve?
The Legacy Museum, and I am reading now from the pamphlet that they have printed.
Okay.
The Legacy Museum is the nation's first memorial dedicated to the legacy of enslaved Black people, people terrorized by lynching, African Americans humiliated by racial segregation, and people of color burdened with contemporary presumptions of guilt and police violence. That is what the Legacy Museum is in Montgomery. Stands in direct contrast to the White House of the Confederacy. I think it is fitting that the city of Montgomery has both.
Yes. There's both histories.
Yes,
Yeah.
has both histories. As I've told my family since coming back to Alabama, I put it to them this way about my presence here and my feelings of being here. I've shown them plenty of pictures of my life in Colorado and some of Colorado's incredible scenic wonders. But what I've told them is this: Colorado has its mountains, and Alabama has its monuments.
Yeah. That's a good saying.
Yes, that's the way I've chosen to look at it.
I hope you enjoyed listening to a rich history of Raymond's family lineage. This is part 1 of this episode. We have the full interview with links in the description below, along with other content from Civic Roots Boar series and new Faceless Studio content. Does the sight of numbers and symbols fill you with all kinds of anxiety? Maybe you like math and you want to learn more or get even better at it. Regardless of your situation, at MindFlex Tutoring, we are ready to assist you with your questions, needs, and goals in using mathematics. We show our clients how mathematics works. We give them critical thinking skills that will enable them to address mathematics with competence and confidence that will make them proficient. Working with us, our clients discover the magic and power that mathematics contains and how their use will empower them to make discoveries and achievements that are both creative and remarkable. And let us know how we can assist you further. Thank you. Thanks for listening, and remember, never give in, never give out, and never give up.